Now open at the Universal Orlando Resort is Universal's Great Movie Escape. It is a place where you can go experience two, and I don't even want to use this term because they very specifically kept telling us not to use this term, even though escape is in the name, but they're essentially escape rooms. One themed to Back to the Future, another one themed to Jurassic World. One called Back to the Future At a Time and Jurassic World Escape. We keep using that word, even though they treat it like it's a dirty word when you're there. But this is new at City Walk at Universal Orlando Resort. It's now operating where the Groove Club used to be. And we went on the opening day and we tried both of these experiences out. And now it's time for Tom's honest review of them. Okay, this is going to be broken into sort of two parts. I'm going to start by trying to talk about both experiences in a spoiler-free manner. Being escape rooms, obviously if I spoil too much, it will be very hard for you to go and enjoy them, right? It's very hard to go. If I tell you how things work out, then you don't get to go and solve that. So I'm just going to break down the basics of the experiences and keep things very, very broad, very general, and then I will warn you when we're going to get into very specific things we like and dislike about these experiences. So let's start first things first. So the way the experience works, booking in advance online on the Universal Orlando website. You can book individual tickets, which they'll let you book up to 6 of them for an experience, if so long as the time slot is available for that many guests. But you could also book groups. You can book essentially a private group to go through these experiences. Back to the Future is not offering that until January. This is just until they get the hang of things and to work out crowds. But as of today, as of right now, from the very start, you can book Jurassic World in both styles. You can book individual tickets for parties of 1 to 6, or you could book that private room essentially. And the pricing is $50 per guest for the standard experience, and then it fluctuates before 6, after 6, and depending when you go, the price will fluctuate on the groups. So, and the price will fluctuate on the regular ticketing as well. But base, let's say $50. They are offering annual pass discounts on those individuals too. And so the way this works is they turned a nightclub into an escape room facility. That being said, in order to enter the facility, you do not need a reservation for the escape rooms. They do have some walk-up availability. Generally, they tell you to book on the website, but you can go there and ask, and they'll let you know if stuff is available. So the way this works is there are the 2 escape rooms, but then in between there is a small shop and 2 bars. And the idea is this is to facilitate while people are waiting, right? So they tell you your full experience will be about 90 minutes long. They tell you, please check in 15 minutes prior to the start of your experience. That's what they tell you to do. And while you're there, again, there's a little store with just a couple of items of logo merchandise and they had a handful of generic Jurassic World and Back to the Future items. I certainly hope they work on this. I mean, it's great that they had their own merchandise, but I think they could be doing more in that department. And then what I think was an unexpected highlight were the 2 bars. So the interior in general is very cool. The exterior is still the Groove. They put new signs up and some banners, but it's still the Groove building. When you get inside, though, that's where the theme kicks in, and the theme is very 1930s Art Deco movie theater. There's a big stage where they have a big screen and trivia is happening. And then throughout that theme continues. And so both of the bars, one on the lower floor, one on the upper floor, both of those bars have sort of a 30s Art Deco theme, as if they are the concession stand or a lobby bar in a vintage movie theater, right? And so as far as themed beverages, they have stuff that's just sort of, Golden Age of Hollywood in theme, and then obviously drinks themed to Back to the Future and some for Jurassic World. We have a separate video where we try them all, so I'm not going to give you the specifics of the drinks, what we liked, what we didn't like. I will say this, the bartenders they have there are some of my favorites from other places. I won't point out where they're from, but other Orlando places I go. I've had some of these bartenders, and they're great. So now the bartender's great. The drink menu they've developed here is great, and it's very thematic, and there's some really interesting, thoughtful stuff. And just little, again, so many thoughtful touches throughout the experience. It's a kind of a silly thing, but it's so cute and touching, is the video menu they have behind the bars for these specialty cocktails. You got to watch this because there are little touches that are nods to the different films, right? So there's a Jurassic World beverage and it comes up and there's Jell-O next to the drink, and so you see the Jell-O shake every couple seconds as if dinosaur, is approaching. There's a Back to the Future one where the crude model car that Doc Brown, uses to illustrate to Marty how they'll send him back to the future. The model car, the wind-up car goes behind the drink, and then as it vanishes in the background, you see the flashes of light as if it has hit 88 miles an hour and made its journey. Little stuff like that, which it's such a tiny thing, but it's such a meaningful thing. But it's 7 or 8 cocktails. They're all very well thought out, and the bartenders are fantastic. I mean, the team members in general here were all fantastic. Like, everyone was really excited to be there and put on their A game. And so it's an incredibly inviting atmosphere, whether you're checking in, shopping, going to the bar, going through the experience, whatever the case may be. Everyone was beyond fantastic. And so, so you're expected to check in 15 minutes early, so you have a couple minutes to get a drink and stuff. Obviously, you can show up early, or if you don't have a reservation, just go in. You're welcome to go to the store or the bar. They're not limiting access. So this is just going to be another bar that's available to guests at City Walk. And personally, I know people love dead coconut, green and red coconut, whatever you want to call it. I like it earlier in the evening, and then once it gets sort of like clubby, which I feel like is not what it's supposed to be. It kind of is sort of the fanboy bar and club at Universal, and they just kind of lose that vibe later in the night. This manages to keep that because it also has to function as the escape rooms. And so the vibe is just, 1930s and 40s music, low key, very nice, cool place to hang out, have a couple drinks, and enjoy a conversation. And if that's not your speed, there is an outdoor patio on the second level where you can, leftover from the Groove, where you can enjoy your cocktails as well. So I like that it's also a cool hangout place. And the vibe in the lobby area is fantastic. There's all sorts of really cool posters and artwork representing Universal City of the time in Hollywood, California. Cool stuff like that. I'm a big fan of that genre, the architecture, Art Deco, the style. It's definitely my kind of scene. More my scene over. I know people love the Coconut Club, but I prefer this. I like a good cocktail, good conversation, a good bartender, and I don't know. It's my kind of scene. But let's talk about the experience. Again, still spoiler free at this point. So with the pre-show experience, after they check you in, they'll do a pre-show sort of safety briefing thing, which is in this strange curtained circular section underneath the staircase where they've thrown 2 televisions on the wall, and it has its moments, right? They did like some 1930s style animation for some of the safety warnings and stuff, which is charming and funny and cute. And it's just weird because it's the interior goes so far with that 30s theme, and it's so impeccable that then you go into this little area under the stairs and it's like, what happened here, guys? I don't know what happened here. I would thought it was weird. I was like, why didn't they just put like 2 little rows of like cinema seats and then just one projector screen, right? It'd be like a little screening room, right? For whatever reason, that didn't happen. I know it's sort of nitpicky, but that's what we do in these honest reviews, right? We like to dissect the experience blow by blow. And so that was one of the things where I was like, that's weird. I don't know if maybe it's going to be more down the road or what's going on, but I thought that was a little strange. And so And then they'll tell you essentially when you leave that curtained area, they'll be like, okay, at 6:15, meet at the marquee for Jurassic World. Meet at the marquee for Back to the Future. They have two separate marquees, Back to the Future on the bottom floor, Jurassic World on the top floor, and there is a singular entrance where they'll scan your ticket, kind of go over the rules again real quick, and then send you inside. All your standard escape room rules apply. There's no photography, no video recording, which is why we don't have anything to show you. Sorry, you get very excited. That's why we don't have anything to show you. No photography, no video recording. And then they have to go through some things that I guess, based on experiences you may have at local escape rooms or other ones you may have been to somewhere. No jumping up on stuff, no climbing. You won't need to dig. I didn't know there was escape rooms where people are digging up the floor, but I guess, in the height of the craze, people might have been doing more intense stuff, I guess. A lot of that kind of stuff. And then they tell you if you need to exit anytime, put both hands over your head in an X and all that kind of stuff. And so this is hard to do without spoilers. So essentially, I'm gonna give away my thoughts early on as to whether you should do these or not. Which I usually like to explain why, but again, I can't really, for those of you that don't want the spoiler experience, I don't want to ruin this. I want to say this. So I came into the experience with low expectations based on things I had heard from people who were on various parts of the project. There were things that were exciting, right? We shared a couple of days before Universal announced it that Christopher Lloyd was coming to reprise his role as Doc Brown and stuff like that. So there were things I was excited about, right? I was excited. Obviously, it's a Back to the Future attraction, essentially, which it's my favorite movie of all time, bar none. So that's exciting to me. And Christopher Lloyd's coming back, and that's all very exciting. But then you hear things, obviously we're in the industry. You hear things from sources, and it's like, okay, it may not be everything I want it to be. So I went in with low expectation. The first one we did was Back to the Future, and then that we did so I'll talk a bit, before we get into spoilers, I'll also talk a bit about the difference of doing one where we were mixed with strangers, and you'll see why you did air quotes there. I know I've done enough of them in the show already. And then doing one as a private group, which is what we did for the Jurassic World one. So I will tell you, I think our individualized experience may be different from yours, because again, this is opening, we did it on opening day, and I somewhat knew the other people in our group. We were all local Orlando theme park people, regardless of who's blogger or vlogger or whatever. But we were all like theme park fanboys and girls who do this stuff. Like, first day of something, you go do it because it's what you do. You're a theme park person. It's what we all do. If I didn't have this job, I'd still be doing it. And the other people were in the group with the same thing. And so even though I don't know these people well, like, I think we were able to do well because, again, several people had a lot, but I think several people in the group had way more escape room experience than I did. But we all are all theme park people, right? And as you intake more and more theme park stuff, you kind of know the beats. You know when something's telling you something's wrong, when something's telling you something's right. You have a feel for these things, right? And so I really like that fun of like getting thrown in with some, and it's true, you could get thrown in with people that aren't fun. We happened to get people that were personable and fun, and it was a good time, even though we didn't know everybody in the room. And that'll happen. And I do believe the other thing will happen, though, right? Where there could be people that just aren't really looking to have fun with people they don't know. Or on the opposite side, where other people are so bad at it, and you're like trying to take, like, people who have different interest levels, right? People are just like, came in, after several cocktails, came off the street at City Walk and just looking for something fun to do, versus the people that are like, all right, I really want to see, I want to solve this and experience it to its fullest. And when you mix those people together in a mixed group, how is that going to go? I don't know, because we didn't have that experience. And that will, as the theme park people funnel through early on, it will be interesting to see and hear maybe stories of how that goes. And then obviously we did the private group, which is what I recommend if you do have a friend group of like 6 to 8. that's a good time. That's a fun way to do it, I think. And everyone chips in a little bit. It might be a little more than it'd be to do separately, but I think again, it's a fun group outing. It's a good idea. I will say this though, and they've already figured this out. The ideal group size, whether it's individuals or a party, is 6 people. Some of the rooms are a bit small; they're a bit tight. Six people is probably the best way. If you have 8 people, like we still had a good time with 8 people in our private group, but there were some activities that were maybe a little harder because of it. So the really cool thing that they've alluded to, and we'll learn as time goes on, is the experience is going to be different at times for different people, whether it's because of your group size, how well you're doing or not doing, whatever that case may be, things will be different. So so if you've solved something really fast, there are secondary and tertiary objectives in scenes. There's more for you to do. Keep going until it's time to move on to a next scene. And if you're doing bad, obviously it's going to cut you off and be like, nope, sorry, we gotta, in story, mind you, not, I'm simplifying it, but in story, they'll move you on to the next scene. And so it's, and then the other thing is because they don't, this is wild because this is in a theme park, one of the most visited theme park environments on Earth, right? It's in Universal Orlando. And the amount of people you have to move through is so much different from any other escape room facility anywhere else on Earth. There's so much foot traffic. And so they're trying to get so many people through. And so that changes the game. Excuse me. That changes the game a lot, right? Crowd flow wise, this is a totally different thing, which is why they make it clear to you in that whole pre-show and everything, and when a team member spiels to you early on, they'll say like, escapes in the name, and kind of like an escape room, but these are not escape rooms. These are adventures. They're definitely not escape rooms, and that's true, and sometimes not so true. And again, when we can get into more spoilers, I'll explain that more in depth. But I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's a spoiler-free way I can talk about it a little bit. So usually, like the escape, I've only done like 2 other escape rooms, but typically they take place in a confined space. I'm sure there's other ones where you start in one room and end in others, but this is, in theme park fashion, you are moving from space to space to space to space to space, right? And so it is sort of this assembly line format same way with like a theme park attraction, right? Where you have a first pre-show, a second pre-show, there's a process, right? Through the experience. And the escape rooms, these things are very much, these escape adventures are like theme park experiences in that way. But again, there will be things we talk about. There are games or tasks that are very escape room-esque, and there are some places where I felt like they really break that mold and pretty successfully. And subvert expectations and do things you completely didn't think were going to happen when you got in there. So again, spoiler free, I'm going to quickly say these are real quick, short reviews. The Back to the Future one I thought was the best attraction experience I have had in a Universal park in my entire life. I mean, at least in the last however many years, at least since like when I went when I was a kid and was just blown away by Kong and Jaws and all of those things at the height of their, the height of their existence, right? It is the most, one of my, obviously, you guys know who I am. I grew up also going to Universal parks, right? I'm a Disney guy, but I grew up, these are also, I love Disney, but my favorite movies, not theme parks, right? Like as far as theme parks, like I'm a Disney guy. Comes to Universal, like my favorite movies of all time, more so than any Disney movie, are movies that I was kind of introduced to going to Universal, which was Jaws, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, right? Those are the movies that in a lot of ways capture the essence of who I am and shape me as a person in a lot of ways. And so that's why I loved Universal of that time, right? And so Back to the Future is very important to me. And this, in all that time since, I feel like what Disney's strength is, and I'm not saying modern Disney, they have their problems, absolutely. But Disney's strength has always been that the theme park experiences don't always just wow. They on a emotional level can make a connection, and they do that more consistently than Universal can. I always feel like that's one of the big problems Universal has. And they have their moments, right? I know for people that love Harry Potter, there are definitely moments in those lands that hit those notes for people. For me personally, because I'm not a big Harry Potter guy, there is nothing I've seen outside of that where it hit those notes for me. Even Nintendo, going to see Super Nintendo World, I had little moments, but I always feel like Universal would fall short of the finish line, and I would be ready to have like that big emotional connection to Mario Kart, and then I'd go through the queue, and this queue is beautiful and amazing and fantastic, and look at all these great references, and I'm really in this thing, and then the ride took me out of it, and so I came just short of that finish line. And I'm rooting for them. I want you to know, like, this industry, we all float together, a rising tide. And I want Universal to succeed because it will push Disney, and then Disney will push them back, and in all, we get a better product. And sometimes I feel like Universal just falls just short of that finish line, and Nintendo was one of those things. And then I did the Back to the Future escape room, and emotionally, it touched me as much as any Disney attraction ever has. I was so surprised by how personally touched I was by the experience, because it just felt like the people that made it loved the film the way I do. It was made by people that grew up loving that movie for people that grew up loving that film series, those Back to the Future movies, and the ride, mind you. We'll talk about that more in the spoilers. It just was, not only we had fun, we laughed, Christopher Lloyd's there as Doc Brown, and there's all these props that bring back all these memories of the ride and the movies, and then at the end, like the Back to the Future music crescendos, and it's playing just like right before the end credits in the film, and it's Doc thanking you for saving the day. Spoiler alert, obviously these have happy endings. You get out of these escape rooms. I don't think that's that big a spoiler. You can't lose these, so it's not a spoiler that you succeed in both of them. And like, for me, it was this big emotional moments. Like, that's actually Doc Brown. It's Christopher Lloyd, and it's me with 5 other people in a room, so it's very personal. And it's the music, and you just like went through all the moments from the films that mean something to you, and then he's thanking you for saving the day, and the music crescendos, and you exit, and it's this euphoric, magical feeling, which, is the moment I live for in my line of work. What I love about this art form is that those moments where you could step into something, and don't get me wrong, I love the moments where you can step into original content, not IP-based, and learn about a character and be introduced to a story and fall in love with it. But there is also, that same magic can happen with IP. And when it's a beloved IP, and when it's done absolutely correctly, and you feel like, my God, I got to go be a part of my favorite movie of all time. That thing I sat at home and watched with my grandparents or my parents or my brother, and I've watched it 50 times, and I love it. And you get to go into that, and it feels like you're really there, and you're in it, and every box is checked of what you wanted out of that experience. That is the magic of themed entertainment when it's working with IP. And the Back to the Future Out of Time escape room, escape adventure, whatever you want to call it, is a masterpiece. It is a brilliant piece of work that checks all the boxes. And if you are a fan of any kind of the Back to the Future film series, it is an absolute must-do thing. I am telling you, you have to go see it, because you will fall in love with it and appreciate this as much as I did. And I would dare say you will never be able to watch the movies again without thinking about the moments in that movie you got to share in this experience at Universal Orlando. I don't know that I've ever given anything at Universal such high praise, but this was, it was everything I could have. It blew away all expectations and delivered everything I ever want from anything in the realm of themed entertainment. Okay. That's where we started the day. Unfortunately, the day took a big dive with Jurassic World Escape. Now, mind you, Jurassic Park, I'm of the proper age. Jurassic Park came out and changed the world, and I was five or 6 years old, something like that at the time. And obviously, if you were my age, anywhere in that age range when that movie came out, like what a revelation, right? That changed your childhood. And so obviously I was a big Jurassic Park fan as a kid, had all the toys and played with them every day. And, a little more, we're getting into the weeds here, but I think it's important when we talk about emotion, and it's not a thing we get to talk about. I feel like I don't get to talk about very often with Universal creative product, but I think it's important here. Just because of what Back to the Future accomplished, and then what I feel like Jurassic World maybe didn't. I love that franchise, and it means a lot to me. And then with even with all that love for it, the Jurassic World one just fell flat. And it felt more like a traditional escape room. So I want to tell you, Back to the Future, if you've done escape rooms, I think Back to the Future does a lot of things very different from normal escape rooms and really feels like a thoughtful and interesting departure, and feels like taking that art form of the escape room to a different place, a place it has not been before as far as level of storytelling and intricacy. And Jurassic World is just as intricate, but it lacks any and all of the emotion. And it doesn't offer all the moments you want to happen, just don't. They just don't happen. And it feels more like an escape room where all the ones I've ever done, it's like, well, we've picked a theme. We have a theme for the escape room. All right, guys, we have a theme for the escape room. All right, so how are we going to fill out 30 minutes of people's time or 60 minutes of people's time, whatever it may be, based on this story? And you just start to create tasks, right? In the case of Back to the Future, it almost felt like they came up with a story and then realized all the ways people could play into the story and have an experience that told a narrative. And then in Jurassic World, it just feels like it's like, okay, we're in the movie and they're here during the movie and these things are going to happen. And I guess, you could be here and you could be doing this thing. I guess this could be happening. To me, it felt like I could be very wrong, and I feel bad because I know, no matter what, people spend months or even sometimes years of their lives working on these things. I feel kind of bad, but the job is to critique it. And so it really felt like to me that Back to the Future got a bigger, it felt like a bigger footprint. It was downstairs. It felt like that was the one they wanted to do. And then for Jurassic World, it felt like it was the one they were forced to do. It felt like maybe, no insight into this. This is pure speculation. But it felt like, as a consumer, that Jurassic World was the one where it was like, okay, management thinks, like Back to the Future is an older franchise. We need something relevant and that we are currently promoting to fill out the other. So we want to have something, we want to have a legacy franchise and we want to have a current franchise to round out the experience. And they're like, okay, Jurassic World then. So in the case of Jurassic World, I don't know if like maybe it just felt like the heart wasn't there. You can tell when, and Tim Delaney, famous Disney Imagineer, I had a conversation with him, and it's the most true. He says, like, you could always tell when there's sincerity in the work. And in Back to the Future is one of those moments where you can feel the sincerity that the people that made it loved it and cared. And then Jurassic World, for some reason, you lose that sincerity. And I don't know, maybe again, is that, some budget got rearranged and they put the money into Back to the Future or whatever the case may be, whatever happened. Or maybe it just didn't work out. I could be totally wrong. These could all be just, all these theories could be completely, invalid. And it might just be that it didn't work out. Sometimes you try your best and things just don't work out. It's hard. It's hard to create experiences from scratch. It's not easy. It's far easier for me to sit here and critique them than it is to make them, honestly. We know that. But when things are released to the public, we gotta dissect it and talk about it. But that's how it felt to me, is that Jurassic World just didn't feel It didn't feel sincere. It didn't feel like it was the main focus of anyone there. It kind of felt forced. And there was a lot of parts where in Back to the Future, again, there were things, all the things as a Back to the Future fan, all the things I wanted were there and more. And as a Jurassic Park fan, all the things I wanted were not there and less in the Jurassic World escape room. So my honest review at this point is, and even if you don't love the Back to the Future movies, and even if you haven't necessarily seen them, which somehow Annie on staff has not, and she did it today and still loved it. And now she's like, I really want to go watch those movies now. So trust me, I can't wrap my head around the fact that someone I know hasn't seen those movies. Blows my mind. But the fact is that someone who never saw the movies had a really great time in the Back to the Future one. And then still felt it was better than the one that they are a mega fan. Annie is a Jurassic World mega fan. Like way bigger Jurassic World fan than I am. And she still at the end, I would still say the Back to the Future one was better. I think that speaks volumes. The other thing I want to say is difficulty-wise, and as far as overall fun, I think the Jurassic World one is way more numbers-based and way more like brain teaser puzzle style, if that makes sense. And then Back to the Future is more like you're really there and solving things in real time and more tactile. There's more physical things to move. And it, again, is a lot of data entry and switch flipping, I feel like, in the Jurassic World one. So I like that they're different. And I totally understand if you sat in a room and were like, we want them to be different in that way. That's great. This one just didn't work out. And we'll get into that in the spoiler portion. But as far as with that being said, I think you can take people of all ages. I think you have fun with the kids in the Back to the Future one, which is weird because the one that probably kids want to do more is probably Jurassic World. And I think it would be hard to do. That being said, again, as I've said before, supposedly experience could change based on the number of people in your group. And then I believe there are some changes that can be made based on how you're doing. So maybe it could be a little easier if they see you have younger kids or some of the sort. Design-wise, there is some ingenious stuff they're doing as far as being able to work with different types of groups, different sizes of groups, and then even making sure they don't have to go reset the room physically, that the next group can come in, and even though you've rearranged and moved stuff, a game will work for them when they come through. It will, because of the way you rearrange stuff, it will be different, because it has to be. So, which is fascinating. So again, in final review, I think you will have the most fantastic evening if you go have a beverage, hang out, do a Back to the Future run. I think you'd have just the most fantastic time. And people in our group. I'm way harder on the Jurassic World one than people in our group over, but everyone in the group was still like, it was fun. It wasn't like, oh, I need to do that again, which is the three of us in Back to the Future all looked at each other and were like, I'm coming back, which is so weird because it's an escape room. Like, you've solved it already, so you know how it's going to go. But that being said, there are, again, if you go back and you solve things faster, additional tasks will emerge. And eventually, they alluded to the fact that there may be a scoring system at some point in the future, too, which would be another reason, right? Like, if there's a leaderboard and stuff, I'm in. Like, that sounds super cool. And I'll come back over and over. It's so much fun that I'm dying for them to give me reasons to book that over and over. I beg you, Universal, give me reasons to keep going back in there. And if it really is that replayable, kudos to everyone involved. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal. So again, Jurassic World, maybe let them figure out the kinks. Maybe it'll get better over time. We'll see. But Back to the Future blows it away and is, I think, more than anything at Universal Orlando Resort, is the thing to see. I love it so much. If you have any feelings about the Back to the Future film series at all, I guarantee you will leave that with the biggest smile on your face. Biggest smile on your face. The case of Jurassic World, here's another great, real quick, spoiler-free analogy, right? As a kid, I think the Back to the Future ride at Universal captured so much of what you loved about the movie. Biff, you're battling with Biff, and you're with Doc Brown, and you're in the DeLorean, and it's even this cool sort of original backstory with the Institute of Future Technology and all this. And Jurassic World Velocicoaster does that, right? Like Jurassic World Velocicoaster, the queue and the pre-show and all of that evokes all that excitement, right? It gets you stoked. It's like, oh, it's a ride about my favorite movie, Jurassic World. And you go through the queue and the statues and the raptors running alongside the trains and the pre-show and all that. And you're like, man, I'm really in this movie that I love. And that's how it was. I remember feeling that for when Back to the Future, the ride, right? I remember feeling that. And so both of those attractions achieve that magic, right? Of like putting you in the movie and making you feel like you're in the movie, and you walk off and you're like, wow, it was a great ride. And it felt like part of, it allowed me to be a part of that thing I love so much. And then the Back to the Future Escape Room does that. And then the Jurassic World one does not deliver the feelings of Velocicoaster. And I'm not talking about like the thrill of a roller coaster. I mean, I'm talking about emotions. And this is, again, why I say theme parks are an art form and not just, a leisure activity. I mean, they are that, but they are an art form because they make you feel things, right? And that's when they're at their best. And if they don't make you feel things, they're not at their best then it is just a leisure thing. So that's my thoughts. Now, I know my studio producer wants to leave the room because I'm going to talk about spoilers, and he doesn't want me to ruin the Back to the Future one for him. There he goes. Bye, Jake. Bye. All right. Jake's gone. We're in the clear. Let's talk about spoilers. Back to the Future Out of Time, number one, has the whole backstory ties in to the ride. It's the Institute of Future Technology, and it's Doc Brown's. Doc Brown has a museum portion that's open at the Institute with all his inventions and all this paraphernalia from his trips through time with Marty that changed the course of history. And it is, oh man, I just know, like from the first moment you walk into, essentially they do have, I know we did like the safety pre-show, but then you go into the first room and it is, both of them have their own basically secondary pre-show where this is the story pre-show. So now we're going to talk about the story experience. We're going to introduce you to the people that are going to be helping you through the experience and what the story is and what you're here to achieve, right? I mean, obviously things change as the story progresses, but that's the purpose. And even from that first room, musically, these are both, even Jurassic World musically, I don't know if they rearrange stuff or they just line stuff up perfectly. Either way, musically, fantastic. The music hits in both of these at all the right times. So the right pieces of music from the film at the right moments, perfectly underscoring it like you are a star in the movie, and John Williams, in the case of Jurassic World, is scoring your life as you live it. Really great. There's some sound design problems I think they're going to overcome as time goes on. They'll figure out. It's sometimes hard to hear the host or narrator character in some rooms of both of them because sometimes the background stuff or a side character or something's happening and it ends up muffling instructions, which is important. And then sometimes it's hard to re-trigger those instructions too. And you're like, what did she say? I don't know what she said because Biff, Buford Tannen's knocking on the door and spoke at the same time she did. So I don't even know. I don't even know what's going on. But again, like I have such a nostalgia for Back to the Future, the ride. And to have that tie-in, it's so great to have it back where it belongs at Universal Orlando. It is. Again, it comes from such a place of love where I'm sure the people that worked on this probably have such an affinity for that ride too. And we're like, if we're going to do this, we got to get some nods to the ride in, right? Like it's got to connect in some way to that. We have to honor that legacy and kind of bring that legacy back to life for another generation of people. And then again, for people that never saw the ride, it doesn't matter. It's just a fictitious organization, right? The Institute. But then for those of us that know what it is, I love that when you can perfectly tie in those references to where it's not like, oh, we're hitting you over the head with a reference to something that older people remember. But it's like the older people are like, oh man, that is that thing from my childhood. And then the people where they didn't experience that thing. It's seamless for them. They don't even know that anything's different. They're just like, oh, it's a fake organization for the purpose of moving the story along. Okay, cool. That's great. And then I want to break down. I'm going to spoil some stuff, but I'm not really going to tell you how to solve anything or anything like that. I want to warn you in that way. I don't want to ruin the experience in that way for you. I just want to talk about, I'm going to spoil what some scenes are. So if you want to have the same reaction I had, which I respect, because there were moments where I went in blind. Like, again, I talked to people who were working on the experience, but I didn't want to know what the scenes were. I didn't want to know that kind of stuff. I wanted to discover the narrative and everything for myself the first time I did it. And so each of these room reveals was, for me, greater than the last. It's, the Cafe 80s and Biff's Casino and being inside the clock tower in 1955 when Marty does hit 88 miles an hour and it hooks the line and he goes back to 1985. Being in the clock tower at that moment, they were just so great. It's everything I wanted, right? And I didn't think I was going to get any of that. I didn't think somehow, because it just didn't seem feasible in a narrative to work all those in together. Even though it is a time travel movie, right? And it should be obvious you could go wherever. That you can go to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and Cafe 80s and Biff's Casino and go back to 1885. Although I think you go back to 1885 in this. It's not later. It's at the time of the movie, part 3. It's so perfectly woven together, and it hits because I love all 3 of those movies. If I have to pick a favorite, I'm weird. I pick 3. I just love 3 so much. But all 3, it's like picking children. All 3 Back to the Future movies are it is such a, I don't even look at them as different movies. I think that the 3 of them exist for me as one cohesive thing. And that's how they exist within the escape room experience. And just every single thing I could have ever wanted them to reference or nod to or bring to life in physical form in front of me, other than the DeLorean, is there in this experience. And I think gameplay-wise, it was, again, subverted expectations. I think the tasks were not at all what I thought they were going to be. And it wasn't, I've done, the few escape rooms I've done, there's been a lot of like, take this number, get a number from here and a number from there, and then you're gonna put those numbers together. But before you do that, you need to get another number from another task over here, and you get that first, and then you can do those. And that's kind of the order of operations thing that a lot of escape rooms do, which I'm not knocking. We've done fun escape rooms like that. I've liked them a lot. That's not what I needed out of this. And I think they kind of understood that. And also, not even that they understood it, I think a product of having to move people every couple minutes to a new room, you don't really have the time for a lot of that. So they did such a good job of figuring out, okay, they're going to have this much time, and let's give them this kind of task. It's going to be complicated enough to where it's going to challenge them to problem solve to get to the point where that's what we have to do. I get it now. And then that's when you make it happen. By the time you figure it out, you have a couple moments to spare at least the first time, and then it's time to move to the next room. We reached a satisfying conclusion in every scene in Back to the Future. And the tasks I thought were challenging enough to take a few minutes to figure out, but not challenging enough to sit there like banging our heads against the wall. And that is the perfect balance based on where this is, right? This is not really in a place where people are coming for escape rooms. This is a place where people are coming to have a theme park resort vacation experience. And this is the proper level of nerdiness and also just fun to be enjoyable for everyone, whether it's the tourist family or, like it was on Friday morning, a bunch of us Orlando local theme park nerds. And I think both groups will have a great time. I think both groups will have a great time. And then the thing that really I loved the most about Back to the Future was the fact that the first room, you solve a puzzle in the first room, and they give you a device. And it's not just like a thing you got to carry around. It has lights and all sorts of things happening on it. So it feels, and it has like a flux capacitor on it. So it feels like you've got this real, you have a tangible item in your hand that they've convinced you is an important part of the story. And it's like, you guys better hold on to that and take it with you. And we're putting it into devices and taking it out and doing all sorts of things with it. And that makes it feel so much more real. In Jurassic World, they don't give you anything to take along for the journey, which I think, yeah, like you probably, again, when you're writing two different ones, you want them to be different enough. And if it's like, well, both of them, you take a device around, or there's some prop, or you got to take a dinosaur egg around, then it would feel repetitive, right? It's like, well, that's what you guys did in the other one. You had a thing to take around with you on the journey. But it really, for Back to the Future, which is, it's a device-heavy franchise, right? It's a franchise based around a time machine. Like, obviously, the characters are great, and you fall in love with them, and they become as important. But at its base, it's a movie about a time machine. It's a movie about a device, and so the escape room is about this device, and then it also becomes about you and the characters in the world. And it just all works together just so well. And the games are fun, but then they also they achieve things in the story that are the moments you want to be a part of. You want to be a part of sending Marty successfully back to 1985. You want to be a part of making sure the Enchantment Under the Sea dance happens and the McFlys meet, right? Those are all things you want to be a part of. And then there were things I didn't even realize I wanted to be a part of, like Biff's Casino. And the room is so perfect, and it really looks like it's out of the film. And you're somewhere in the casino. And it just like, look at these mirror columns and all the tiger print wall covering, and it's perfection. But then they also invented like new things. There's fake new Biff inventions that's about like where he invested his money that he made with all his gambling, thanks to the Sports Almanac, all his winnings. And it's weird inventions that he made that Biff Co. is selling. And they actually, they wrote out, you hit certain buttons and it'll tell you about all these different Biff Co. inventions or products. And they have little backstories and taglines and things. So show writing wise, impeccable. Show writing wise, it's so fun. It's a lot of, again, nods to existing stuff, but then also expanding the universe with new things that do not feel out of place, like new props and things that blend into the existing world from the films and from the old ride. And it all works together beautifully effects-wise. I mean, strobes and smoke and lighting and video. And Jurassic World reminded me more of Universal, and the things that bother me about Universal is when we rely on screens when it's clear what would have been more meaningful to people is to do it a different way, and it could have been done a different way, right? The screen was not a necessity. You could physically achieve that effect. You didn't, whether for a budgetary reason or time reason, whatever the case may be, you didn't go for it. In Back to the Future, it's clear that you really couldn't have done those things physically, and the projection stuff is few and far between, but when it is used, it's like jaw-droppingly cool because you're in the clock tower. And outside the clock tower, you can see through the translucent face of the clock that Doc is there trying to hook the thing up to get Marty back to the future. And you see him there, and you see him go through all the struggle he goes through in the film in just silhouette form. And it's like, that's really happening outside the window. I'm there, and it's happening. And it's pure magic. It's pure magic. I love it. I love it so much. I know I ramble at times because we don't script these. I like to just come in and put my feelings to video, right? And so I apologize if we ramble a little bit at times. So I don't know what else to say about Back to the Future. Again, just it made me, I got a little teary-eyed at the end because it was very similar to me. Like I finally got to go to Universal Studios Japan a couple months ago and ride Jaws again, which is a very important ride to me. I remember riding it with my grandmother and my parents, and sort of a family thing. And it went away, and it's very sad, right? And you don't, in this realm, you don't get to go home again because when rides are removed, they go away. When rides are closed, they don't come back, right? We've had 3D shows come back, stuff like that. Entertainment has come back in theme park history, but old rides never really come back. That's not a thing. And so I kind of got to have the forbidden fruit. I got to experience the thing that we don't get as fans, is that thing you loved coming back to life by going to Osaka. Jaws came back to life for me. So the sadness I would feel when I went to Universal Studios Florida, I'm like, all that stuff from my childhood is gone. And I love that ride, and I miss going on that. I miss, my parents visiting. We go on Jaws. It's just a fun, kooky little ride. And to go to Japan and go on it, and it exists again, right? And so even now I go back, anytime I go to USF now, it's like that sadness is gone. When I see the Bruce statue next to Shea Alcatraz, it's like, I'm not sad about that anymore. It's alive. It exists. It's like when Marty finds out Doc is alive in 1885. It's like, he's alive. The Doc's alive. He's in 1885, but he's alive. It's like, yeah, Jaws, it's alive. It's across the ocean in a very expensive trip, opposed at least to going down the street for me. But he's alive, right? And Back to the Future at a Time is kind of like the ride coming back to life. It's not the ride, but it is such a great spiritual successor to the ride that, again, it has like lifted that sadness for me. That disappointment that this great attraction from my childhood is long gone. It kind of feels like it is still alive. And it's been made relevant. What's even better is it's been made relevant for another generation in a different form, right? It's in a form now where maybe it will be able to live on for another considerable amount of time, and a whole new generation will be introduced to Back to the Future, the way I was through theme parks, right? I love that. That makes me very happy. So that's the specialness of these things. Again, it's very rare in all this. As you get, if we have younger viewers, you'll get to that moment in your fandom where, again, it's not like movies or TV. Like a TV show ends, but you could always go back and watch it, right? You can always go back and binge that show you love again, or go watch, or like Back to the Future, go watch that movie again anytime you want. YouTube videos do not bring back the magic of the things that are no longer there. And so there will be things that you love today that at some point in your life, they will go away, and you'll have sort of that sadness. Like, I'm not saying like crippling sadness, but like that nostalgic sadness of a time in your life that's gone, it's nostalgia. And these moments where that nostalgia comes back to life are few and far between. And so that's what makes that so special. But let's talk about Jurassic World. So as the Back to the Future experience sort of etches its own story, taking the Institute of Future Technology and the three films and interlacing you between all of them in a new narrative that's a sort of like a fourth film even, which is not to discredit the Telltale game. The Telltale video game does a great job of being the fourth Back to the Future, by the way, if you've never played it. But in a way, the escape room is the fourth movie. In Jurassic World, you are just in the movie. You are in the movie same as Velocicoaster is no different. And Jurassic World, the ride in Hollywood is no different either. Where you're in the movie while the movie's happening, right? Which is fine. It could work. It's worked for many attractions before, and it'll work for many attractions moving forward. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I think it doesn't work. In this case, I think that put them in a hole they could not dig themselves out of. And that it became, you have to escape the demise of Jurassic World the same way as like the characters in the movie did, or more so to me, it felt more like the narrative of the Jurassic World animated series. I don't know if people have seen this, it's on Netflix. Sort of that where it's like we're tertiary characters that happen to be stuck in the midst of this Jurassic World collapse while it's happening, and we're just playing a role in the background. As opposed to the Back to the Future experience where it feels like you are as involved in the story as Doc Brown is, which is why it makes that personal connection. Jurassic World, instead, you feel like you're a background character. You're doing, in some cases, you're doing kind of nonsense tasks. The first room was, like the first time we achieved the task in the first room, it was cute and fun. And then it just kept doing it, but adding like a slight layer of complexity to it as we did it over and over. And by the end, it's like, guys, we've done this like 5 times now. This isn't fun anymore. I'm not enjoying this room. Let's go. Move to the next one. That being said, there were two other rooms where I felt like it was really fun. It felt like traditional escape room, but it was fun. I liked, actually three of them. I like that there's one where you mix sort of a nutrient feed for a velociraptor, which was fun enough. Then there is an embryo game where you're in sort of the embryo room and you have to power, I'm going to mess up all this terminology, and Annie will correct me in the comments probably when she watches this. You got to power the coolant and then switch the coolant into the other side so that way you can enter the right coding sequences for the embryos, and there's a cabinet behind you where it'll reveal what the embryo codes are, and you got to punch them in, and it was kind of a fun game. And then there's also this big frosted window that reveals the big embryo tube thing, and I like that a lot. I thought the propping was like, you had this big fun prop to play with, and yeah. And the other thing that was fun was just because a very traditional escape room in every way. The control center for Jurassic World, when you're in there and there's 6 consoles and you're all yelling numbers back and forth at each other. It's like someone's like, hey, how many people are in the park right now? Give me that number, and the people in the second row punch it in. And it's like, okay, well, if the people in the park is over this number, then we have to use code C, and this person has to get code C, and then the person at the power station is going to enter the code, and we did it, and you just keep doing that. It was fun for the whole time we were in there. The problem beyond that was a lack of payoff, and then also a lack of unique experience. Again, those all felt like quintessential, very standard escape room experiences, and very screen-based, right? This is what I had feared the experience would be, because sometimes, again, I think Universal sometimes relies on the screens a little too much. In total, the whole industry now, Disney's just as, and I'll be fair, Disney's just as stuck in this problem now with focusing on projection and screens when you could still do physical in many cases. And there is a big reliance on screens in the Jurassic World one, which I guess makes more sense. Like you're in a lot of high-tech facilities at Jurassic World working on stuff. I mean, it makes sense. But that being said, then maybe some dinosaurs, maybe some physical dinosaurs could appear. Nope. No, instead we have a screen velociraptor behind a wall that's supposed to be intimidating. We have when flying dinosaurs attack, we have lights and sound that happen in the ceiling, which doesn't convince me that there's a dinosaur there. They do the one of the more clever moments is clever girl velociraptor. There's a velociraptor part where, just like on the Hogwarts Express, in the glass of the door, the silhouette of a velociraptor is there, and it's like, oh, the velociraptor's there. And I think I did the Hermione impression. Honestly, Ron, and everyone in the room laughed because we're all terrible nerds. But that one, it was a more convincing effect than the flying dinosaurs that made lights change and sounds go off in the ceiling. What was really sad was there was a cool part where we're supposed to be outside, and you see, like, in the corner there is some like beaten up fencing from Jurassic World, right? So this is like in the movie, in the ride, it's like, oh, there's a fence and it's kind of busted. A dinosaur is going to come through that, right? Oh, that's not good. And so we're outside kind of, and we're trying to open the locks to this door. And you think, like, you're not even hearing like a lot of dinosaur sounds while this is happening. I'm thinking, like, man, there's going to be a dinosaur head that pops out of that bush behind that broken electric fence. And it's going to be a cool moment. It doesn't happen. You go through the door. And the door closes and you move on to the next thing. It's like, okay. There is finally a nice moment towards the end where they attempt to have a dinosaur encounter, where you're in a room and you think there's going to be some task because and this is a great fake out. This is a top tier fake out and the highlight of the experience. there's a bulletin board and a whole bunch of stuff that looks like it might open in this room. And so you get into the room, and by the time it seems like the game is about to start in that room, there's no game. You hear and it's getting close. The Indominus is getting closer. And then very suddenly, again, you have a lot of time to think about it. Suddenly, room goes black. You feel a burst of air. Wall rips open, and there's half the side of a face of an Indominus. And it's at least a great quick jump scare moment, and it's funny and entertaining. And then very quickly, they rush you out of the room. And that was the only moment in the Jurassic World one where I was like, that was fun and cool. Great. But I find myself feeling like, in the first movie when Ian Malcolm is like, Mr. Hammond, are there any dinosaurs in your dinosaur park? I was kind of like, Universal, are there any dinosaurs in your dinosaur escape room? And that's how it felt. And so just a letdown. Like it didn't capture anything of the films. There was nothing from the films that I particularly loved and means anything to me. There was very little dinosaur interaction, and then everything felt very formulaic escape room. And a great example of all this is Universal does such a great job with their tribute stores in Universal Studios Florida, right? The tribute stores are amazing. And I'm sure you guys remember the Jurassic World tribute store. The Jurassic World tribute store hit all the moments and all of the emotion. It's store, mind you. Hit all of the moments and emotion I would have wanted the escape room experience to hit. And instead, the escape room experience captured none of it. Right? Because the tribute store had, a whole control room that felt very real and was great scale. But then also had a room that was, you're going into the rundown old Jurassic Park section of the island, and that touches, again, for a whole generation of people, that captures a lot of emotion. I spent so much time in that room of the store. And then like the incubation room with the eggs, I just think those are those would have been such good scenes in this escape room, and they fit the Jurassic World timeline and story. And just nope, we're not doing any of that. And that's why that one felt like an afterthought. That's why that one felt kind of like a flop. It's a shame that they did a better job with the store. I don't know. Again, maybe they just got so caught up in, okay, we have to give people activities, and what are the activities they can do, and what are activities we can do that only take place over this, 10, 15-minute time frame, because we got to keep the rooms moving. There are definitely, times that you have to make operational considerations that affect or diminish the artistry or the emotional impact in a project, right? And I'm sure that's a possibility also. I don't want to say that no one tried. That's so unfair to say nobody tried. It just feels like it was clear the people that worked on the Back to the Future one just cared so much more. Or just maybe had a better heading. I don't know. But I would give the Jurassic World one another go. I'd be surprised if I felt differently. I'd give that one another go, as opposed to, again, what a difference in emotion earlier in the day, thinking like, oh, I can't wait to do the Jurassic World one because the Back to the Future one was just incredible, and I can't wait to. I literally, 10 minutes after we exited, I booked a group for Back to the Future to take my family and some friends again. I was like, I gotta go back. I have to see this again. I have to see it again. And Jurassic World, I thought like, I almost bought it. I almost bought a group to go back to Jurassic World earlier in the day, and I was like, well, I'll just wait and see if I like that one as much. And then at the end, I was like, I'm glad I didn't, because I don't think none of my friends are clamoring to go back. My family, I don't think would be along for the ride with that one. So we're just not going to do it. I'm sure I'll go back at some point and give it another shot. But for now, I'm good on Jurassic World. But again, total opposite. I cannot wait to see that Back to the Future one again and again, and just spend some more time in those spaces. Which scenic design, right? I say it over and over. I said it in the Super Nintendo World review, honest review, which you should check out if you're looking forward to Super Nintendo World. Although maybe not, because I might ruin it for you. I don't know. I'm good at that. People tell me. They're so good at scenic. Universal Creative is so good at scenic design. Everyone that worked on this. The same thing with Horror Nights, right? And I know some Horror Nights people were involved in this. They're so good at scenic design. And so all of the scenes, like even in Jurassic World, the sets are really pretty. But in the Back to the Future one especially, the rooms are so pretty and set a mood and put you in a different place. They're beautiful. They're really beautifully staged and set up, and they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous, right? And that's what I always say about Universal rides is like their scenic design is so good, but they just can't cross that finish line with rides. And here's a case where they didn't have to build a ride, and man, did the scenic people and then the people that put the game and the story together, man, did all of them come together for just the most quintessentially perfect experience for the Back to the Future fan. Everything came together perfectly. I know this is already a super long review because I've gushed. I never gush like this about seemingly anything. But that, I hope, people are always like, I think you're a little negative. I think you're a little too negative. I think I'm fair. And I think, and part of that fairness is when something is truly great, it brings me so much excitement to come out and tell you how much I loved something. That's so exciting that something was so good that someone, because obviously, let's be honest, you get jaded the more of this you see, right? If the more Universal parks around the world you see, the more of a guide rail you have, the more of a frame of reference you have as to what is good, what's bad, and what's great, right? So the more Universal parks you see, the more you're like, well, this is not as good as this one or this one or this one. And the same for Disney and the same for theme park world in general. When you've seen so much of what the industry has done, it is easy to be jaded and see a lot of things done over and over again and be like, okay, like I've seen that already, guys. I want to see something new and exciting. And sometimes that's unfair in a review, and I try very hard to put things in perspective and think about it from the point of view of someone who doesn't live my life. Someone who doesn't live theme parks every day of their life, which I'm very blessed and very happy to do. But I try very hard to be fair and balanced and to not let that factor into my thoughts on something. And so it's easy to be jaded, but I hope that when you guys do hear me come out and say how much I love something, you realize that means I truly believe it is something special and worth your time and money. Because I don't take it lightly that people wait to hear what I say and then spend money based on that. I will tell you, there's been a handful of times where I put out a dining review and people go and they like, oh, we didn't like the restaurant you recommended. And I feel terrible because I know people spent money, and I know it's food is subjective, right? And so it's hard to recommend stuff, and but I take great pride in the fact that a majority of people that go to the places I recommend come back and are like, I'm so glad you recommended that. It was so good. And I am hopeful that this will be the same sort of thing, because this is an added expense, right? This is not just like, oh, I'm already going to the park. Should I go do that new restaurant? Should I go to that new ride, et cetera? This is a case of where it is an add-on experience, and it is, it's a nice sum of money for how long it is. It's total. They say in total a 90-minute experience. I think, I wish I had sort of marked down how long we were in each experience. I think we ended up being probably almost an hour in each of them, somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour. Don't quote me on that, because I don't know. I enjoyed them both so much, or I enjoyed the Back to the Future one so much that I didn't really keep track of time, and was in such a rush after leaving Jurassic World to come film this review that I think I forgot to really look at how long it took to get through the experience. But they quote it as from check-in to completion, you should be in the building for 90 minutes, is what they say. And that's probably, based on 11, 12, it's about right. It's definitely in the zone. So, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything I haven't touched on at this point, but I think I've probably talked enough for one evening. But I thank you for your patience with me. So again, in review, Universal's great movie Escape, Back to the Future, home run, absolutely spectacular. Jurassic World, it's okay, it's fine. It's not great. The thing about an escape room is I feel like it's a lot easier to go in and make changes and make alterations and such. And so I think maybe if that's the way people feel in general, then I think there's a good chance they might be able to go in and spruce it up and fix things up and make changes that maybe make the Jurassic World one better. And I certainly hope they do. I would look forward to that. Regardless, I look forward to more of this. I know the escape room trend isn't exactly it's not the trendiest thing anymore. But I hope this is an eye-opening moment for the industry where maybe there's this realization of like, not everything has to be a ride. You can do really great attractions that aren't rides. I know it's funny in the week in which they announced a moving walkway attraction with the Minions for Universal Studios Florida. But it's true. I mean, if an experience is great and jaw-dropping and makes you feel all those emotions, you don't need to get in a ride vehicle. Then, like, obviously, we should still have rides. It's an important part of what theme parks are. But I think it opens the door for what more themed experiences could be in a lot of the same vein as Galactic Star Cruiser at Disney World, which I will tell you this, there is a whole section of the Jurassic World escape room that felt almost identical to a portion of a certain path on the Galactic Star Cruiser experience, where you worked in like I'm forgetting the name of the room, but like essentially a maintenance room. And it was very similar to a whole portion of the Jurassic World when I was like, this is like, it felt almost lifted from it, but I'm sure both of them, let's be honest, both Star Cruiser and the Jurassic World escape room probably lifted that from real escape rooms all over the place that have already been doing that kind of stuff, if we're being totally honest. So yeah, go check out Universal's great movie Escape. It's now open. And again, we highly recommend you spending an evening there with drinks and Back to the Future and more. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed my rambling, if you like this for some reason, please hit the like button and please subscribe to Universal Parks News Today for the latest from all of the Universal theme parks around the world. This is Tom Corliss for UPNT saying, the future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one.